Good afternoon. This is Real Estate Divas. I'm Kristin Gerst, and I am here with the fabulous Jerleigh Thompson. And today we are talking about how to successfully lower your property taxes, which is an amazing, huge deal after we did this show a little over a year ago.
Yeah, I think it was almost 2 years ago that we did our first episode of how to reduce your property taxes. And it was because we were getting so many people contacting us, asking us for information, how do I do it, blah, blah, blah. And then you and I decided that we'd just do a show on it. And it has gotten a lot of feedback.
It is, and it's something that everybody needs to know, whether you're a real estate investor or just a homeowner. Being
Exactly,
able to,
across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, right now, we've decided to redo the show because now it's in the midst of COVID, and there's
slightly different
on the pestle.
And also just projecting what you'll probably have to deal with in the future. I mean, because it's going to be different. And whereas a lot of things might go back to the norm, there's probably a lot of things that are going to change and forever change from here on out.
Excellent. How many are you currently protesting?
Right now, I'm protesting about 6 properties in 3 different counties.
And are they all similar in the way they work?
Somewhat. I mean, there's one that's land. The rest of them are residential properties. Obviously, if you're disputing commercial, that's going to be different as well, because you have to dispute like and kind properties. You're not just like pulling comps for anything. If you're going to sell a house or buy a house, you're comparing like and kind properties.
Excellent. So what are some of the misconceptions?
So one of the biggest that we discussed last time we did this show is that most homeowners immediately think, well, I don't want to dispute my property taxes because if I dispute my property taxes, somehow that messes up my market value of my house. That is so untrue. So untrue. Like, you just don't go ahead and dispute them. You're not going to affect the property value when it comes to selling your home.
Or how much somebody will pay you for your home.
Exactly. Market value is just that, market value. And tax value is completely separate from that. And tax value is supposed to be lower than market value. They do that on purpose so that the ebb and flow of the market doesn't mean that the tax appraisal district has to always readjust every single year.
Well, after we did the show a couple years ago, I had a conversation with my father, and he goes, well, I'd like to look at, what my tax value is. And I said, okay, well, yeah, let's go look at that. And it was a lot lower than he thought it should be. He goes, I need to call them because this is way off. Like, I'm like, no, Dad, this is how much money, they're charging you. So no, you want that number low. Yeah, a lot lower than what you could sell it for in most cases.
Exactly. I mean, and it seems counterintuitive because people think, oh, well, if a buyer looks up my tax appraised value and then sees what I'm actually trying to get for the house, that somehow those two things will counteract each other, and that's not true at all.
Yeah. So very good. So what about what's the rule of thumb? Where should your taxes, how much are they legally allowed to raise your property value, and i.e. your property taxes
There's not
year?
really a legal, if there is, then I don't know about it. Maybe one of the attorneys that do this on a regular basis, and that's all that they do is dispute property taxes and things like that. They might have a better idea of that. But as far as a rule of thumb, you want your property taxes to be somewhere around 10% at least under market value. And in order to get that market value, then you want to talk to either a realtor or find a service online that can provide that to you. Propelio is one that we've talked about before. Right. You can go on there, you can sign up for a month, and yeah, you might pay $90 for that month, but oh my goodness, you just saved how many hundreds of thousands of dollars on your property taxes.
No, that's great.
So typically you want to dispute so that you're about 10% under market value. And that also depends on your property, which
but
is
to
what
be fair, we see it all the time where the tax value is 50%
it happens less. Well, and if your grandfather, when did you buy the house? How many times have you disputed the property taxes? If you can dispute property taxes, granted, they're not raised every year, but if you can dispute them every year, dispute them every year. You know, every time they raise them, no, I don't like it. Just,
So, and that's one of the big fears of people doing this is if I dispute these and they tell me no, will they raise them higher than what they first told me? When they actually go in and take a look at it, will they raise it?
I have never, ever, ever experienced that. And again, I don't do this for a living, but I do it with enough regularity that I've never come across to where you dispute what they originally sent you and then now
you come in with pictures and evidence and they go, oh, well, yeah, we're looking at it now more closely. It's actually worth more. Yeah.
They come to the number that they send out. They come to that at the end of 2000, whatever the prior year is that you're disputing. They come to that number. They send it out. That is the number, as far as I know. That is the number that they would like to get on that property. Then you dispute it, and if they don't leave it exactly the same, then typically you're going to get it lowered just for the action of trying to dispute it.
I've never had a property that I disputed that didn't get lowered. And I've never had one, definitely not raised.
I had one last year.
That didn't get lowered?
That didn't get lowered.
It was kind of a banner year for real estate.
It was. But the one that didn't get lowered, it was actually, and we'll talk more about the kind of semantics here in a second, but that was actually paperwork filled out wrong. So that was one of those that I was disputing for a client, and we went in there, got my date set up. I went in there in person to dispute, and then come to find out when they had lost my paperwork at the appraisal district. I was there forever. When they finally found it, they said, oh, well, your client here, the homeowner, signed and dated it, but they dated it incorrectly. So as of that day that I was in there at the appraisal board, I was not legally able to dispute it in person because he had dated it the day that he signed it, instead of saying that I can dispute this value for and have access to this value and represent them for a year. Then they just put the date of when I was in there.
Right.
So, or when they were filling it out. So it was kind of BS.
Let's talk about a way that a lot of people can lower their property taxes that they don't even realize about: the homestead exemption.
Yes, that one everybody needs to do, and if you haven't done it and you live in the property, homestead your house. It's an automatic, but you do have to fill out the paperwork. You do have to say, yes, I want to homestead this house.
But it's an easy piece of paperwork to do. It's a one page.
Yeah, it's easy breezy.
And you can get it from your title company. You can get it from your loan servicing company will oftentimes have it. For owner finance professionals out there, that's the biggest one. I'm like, why? Why isn't this under a homestead exemption? Why are their property taxes so high? So the difference, that has to be the home that you live in compared to a piece of investment property.
Exactly.
But
you can't
if you're living in
homestead
the
an
home,
investment property.
Make sure that it's homestead.
Unless you're renting someplace else. I mean, you can semantically. I'm not an attorney.
So right. So I've had owner finance borrowers and clients as well. I couldn't believe how low their property taxes were. There are exemptions for older people over, I think it's over 65.
Over 65.
If anybody's on any type of older people.
You pointed at her right when you said that.
Oh.
No,
I'm asking,
she was pointing just to confirm. She was not pointing at me like I was 65.
No, she's not 65. Yeah, now I'm thinking of like golden heels. Just like flash in my mind. So yeah, no, the homestead exemption, the older 65 exemption. I had a client that was on disability.
Yes, disability is a good one.
They paid almost $0 in property taxes. I think they paid $5 a year or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
And it was due to just being on disability. I even think that there might be some exemptions for military.
There is. And so there's a ton of, basically everything that you just stated right there. There's a ton of exemptions that help keep your property tax low so that you're not paying out the wazoo for property taxes, every year. And so that they don't keep creeping up to, because property taxes in years like we've seen as far as sales and everything, stellar sales, those property taxes continue to go up. And then sometimes that's what ends up forcing people to move. They can't afford the taxes on the house any longer. So that's why it's so important to dispute those property taxes and do it over a period of time. Don't think that just because you dispute it this year, now you can get back, you can go back 5 years and get that rate, because you can't. That's the reason it's important to, every time they go to raise the taxes, that you dispute it and it's slowly chipping away at it, and you're not looking for those huge chunks to lower those property taxes.
Correct. Well, and so coming up in this tax year, we are going to be, it's COVID. Everybody knows that the market is going to soften. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to get your property taxes lowered.
True, but maybe not this year. This year it's too soon. This show is about lowering your property taxes. Yes, you can get it lowered, but as far as
extreme taking off.
Yes, and including everything that's going on with COVID and any backlash that we see in the real estate market for that, it's too soon to really use.
Well, we still haven't seen it yet.
We haven't.
I haven't seen price dips, maybe 1 or 2%, but
no, it's still going strong. People are still selling and buying, but it's inevitable. Like we spoke before, it will soften
and it will correct. Mm-hmm. And when it does, people need to be ready and go in and protest these taxes, because if they don't, I'm assuming that the county is not just going to go, oh wow, it was worth this, but let's not collect that much money from them this year. Let's lower that for them.
Yeah, they don't just automatically start sending out, hey, we're lowering your property tax. But let's go ahead and dive in, since what y'all are interested in is actually disputing the taxes. Let me walk you through that process, because it can, if you've never done it before, it can seem a little daunting. They send you the little piece of paper in the mail of, don't pay this right now, but this is what your property taxes are going up to, and then you're freaking out. So,
and I just got from Dallas County, my stack of little cards, but they look different this year than what they've looked in years past.
So it was just a little card, like a little pink
card and
or yellow card?
And it basically said, we're going to be assessing your property taxes. Usually they say what the value is, but there was no value on there yet.
Well, and this year, so because of COVID, one thing that it has affected with this year and disputing property taxes is that most every dispute is going to happen online. And they moved our date to dispute and to file a dispute with the county to July 15th, just like all the other taxes. Everything was moved to July 15th. So whereas by July 15th or the end of July, typically they're done with all of their disputes. Everybody's come for their appointments and they know what everybody's property taxes are going to be. This year, not so much, because if you're disputing them by July 15th, now there's some counties that I haven't even gotten my date for when I'm going to be disputing it online or on a conference call or anything like that. So things are going to be quite delayed this year. So the answer to your questions is, the reason you don't have property tax value on there and it's not saying it's been assessed at blah, 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 is because they haven't assessed it.
Okay, so are they going to be sending out those values for this coming year, October?
It'll probably, yeah, I would look at it probably late fall.
Because you were saying there's a property that you haven't even been given an appointment for.
Yeah, there's like 3 properties that I haven't, in Harris and Ellis County, I haven't been given any.
They haven't even had time to schedule those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so first protest with your property tax?
So when you go to, when you typically would go to protest it, you go online. They're going to ask you some questions. They're going to ask you, hey, Do you want to dispute this? You're going to hit yes. If you have an idea of what you would like it to be lowered to, whether you can support it or not, just go ahead and put in that number, because they're going to ask you what number you think it is, what you think it's worth. Because on most of the websites, especially whenever you're talking like Tarrant and Dallas County, which is where we're located. So Tarrant and Dallas County are the big counties here, and then you have all the surrounding ones. In those two websites, they say, this is what we think it's worth. You put in your value, and they'll give you a yes or no right then. So let's say you only wanted it to be $10,000 less, then there's a chance they might just accept it right then. You never have to dispute it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and so you've just settled it online and done and got it lowered. If you're trying to get a larger deduction, they may not accept it, and then you're going to have to make an appointment. But while you're on that website, they ask several times, basically to make sure that you know what you're going to do, is dispute those taxes, and to kind of give you that
Fear factor.
That fear factor of, are you sure you want to do this? So they ask several times, kind of like when you're deleting files, or
Are you sure you want to delete
Are you
this?
sure you want to do this? And so you'll be asked that several times when you're on those websites.
But the answer is don't be afraid of doing it.
Yeah, just hit yes. I mean, the worst, it's kind of like when you're cold calling or something like that. The worst that's going to happen is a no.
Correct.
So don't fear the no. It's going to be okay. Because the worst that's going to happen is you're going to end up with exactly what they said your house was worth, which stinks, but you're not any worse off for it.
But they do make it seem like, hey, there's a shot we're gonna raise this.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you're gonna be a jerk,
this is
and
a real
keep
gamble.
saying yes, I want to do this. Yeah, this might get raised on you.
Yeah.
But again, you and I have never heard that of
Never
that happening,
experienced it.
and I've never experienced it either. All right, so what's the next step? Once you've hit that, if they don't accept it, and you're saying if you ask for something,
If you're doing more minimal, like
how much is minimal?
Minimal, I would say in the $5,000 to $10,000 range.
Okay.
Less than what they're proposing your property is
That
worth.
is not your actual tax bill. That is your
No, that's
property tax value.
value that they're trying to say your house is worth $250, and it went up, $30,000 from last year. So if you're disputing it and you're trying to say, I think it's worth $245, most likely online they'll say, okay, we accept that value,
Really?
and then you don't have to go in.
Yeah,
you
but
don't
the
have to-
difference in property tax on that is
minimal. I mean, I always go for the woo big guns. I was like, how low can we go? It's gonna go up, and unless there's something major, it's not gonna stay the same in this kind of market. But
Is it also smart to do the art of negotiation on there? So when you're negotiating, I don't know if anybody knows this, works when you go dicker in like a third world market. They say, oh, I want $50 for this. The price you want to pay is $25, so you go, yeah, I'd like to pay $13 for it, and you kind of inch up to what you actually want to pay.
exactly. Well, and that's the reason I go guns a-blazing. I want it to be, I want the $50,000 off. I want the $200,000 tax appraised value. Whether my house could sell tomorrow for $260, $275, I want it as low as possible. And yeah, hopefully we will meet somewhere in the middle.
You will meet somewhere in the middle. So you're not necessarily going with what you can prove at this point.
Exactly.
You're asking for even less than that and going, hey, can we compromise somewhere?
Exactly.
And you've found that to be a proven strategy.
It works. I mean, granted, they pretty much know, unless there's huge extenuating circumstances, they pretty much know what they're willing to come down. But it's worth a try. It's worth a try. So once you either get it accepted or now you're denied, they don't accept your tax appraised value that you've suggested, then they will let you know, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And then you hit yes, and then they'll let you know that, okay, we'll send you a notice letting you know when your appointment is set for. So they'll send you an email or whatever, information you have on there, most likely email and snail mail. You'll get something saying this is your dispute date. You'll have to show up at the county courthouse and dispute it in person in front of a board of 3 to 4 people. And then there's usually somebody also just dictating, taking notes for everything. But before you go to that date, then you want to collect as much information as possible, because what we're doing when we're disputing our tax appraised value is you are trying to you're doing exactly the opposite when you're going to sell your house. You want your house to look beautiful. You want to talk about all the great things. But on this, you want to talk about how cruddy your house is. Everything that it needs and it doesn't have, and it doesn't look like my neighbor's house because I've got no money, I've got kids, I've got 5 dogs. You know, I mean,
It's a hovel.
yeah, it's barely livable. You know, you just want to point out every single thing that is not up to date, that's wrong with your house, and then if you can, get bids for those things. Because you're trying to say, my house isn't worth that. It would cost me this much money to get it worth what you're proposing it's worth.
And so for everybody out there who's watching this and they know that, you know, they're just a regular homeowner, what's an easy way to get bids for this?
Well, most contractors will come out and give you a bid for no cost whatsoever. So you're not money out of pocket. And if you're doing it on your own, then even if there is like maybe a trip fee or something like that, which is seldom, but if there is, then, I mean, if you're saving hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars, it's worth the $50 or $75 trip fee for the bid.
And the other thing I like, a lot of times if you take your measurements and you've got like an old kitchen, you can go to your local Home Depot, Lowe's.
Exactly.
And just get them, okay, this is what I want. Here's my blueprint of my kitchen. I want these countertops, this backsplash, this, you know, these cabinets specifically.
And you're not wasting anybody's time except for yours. Yours is the only time that you're spending doing that. And that's a fantastic avenue, actually. Home Depot, Lowe's, any flooring, you know, companies or anything like that, you just go and you get the bids from them, and then you take those bids with you for that dispute.
Yes, yes. Huge shout out right now to Tyler Waldrop.
Hey, Tyler.
Tyler was,
I miss Tyler.
I miss Tyler too. He's at the appraisal office right now in Kaufman, waiting to go dispute his taxes. How awesome is that?
Oh my goodness, really?
And he's obviously in person.
Yeah, so right now it's a little bit different just because not every county is allowing in person. Most are going to just either a Zoom call or a conference call, and that's because of the COVID business. But I'm surprised they've been discouraging the in person.
But, you know, it's Kaufman, so I think they probably got less COVID cases down there. So it's
exactly. Well,
not
the
a
more
huge fair.
rural you get, the more likely they're going to go.
But Tyler was, I mean, a huge fan of when we did this the first time. I forget how much Tyler saved on his property taxes.
He saved hundreds of thousands because he had commercial properties and then rental I mean, he had several properties to deal with. And
well, and obviously right now, if you are a commercial property investor and you've got commercial property, I would make sure you're going there and
Absolutely.
protesting those, because I think they should be lenient, especially on commercial.
Well, and I've had a lot of questions, kind of off track a little bit, but I've had a lot of questions about why are they raising property values? Don't they know all these people are out of work? COVID this, COVID that. Well, these values were determined prior to. They were determined at the end of 2019. So they send this out no matter what. Yes, they know this is going on, so most likely next year they're not going to raise property taxes. I mean, they might on some properties, but it'll be easier to dispute because of the COVID business.
Well, the fact is we might not see, you know, the drop in home prices by the end of this year.
Oh, no.
A lot of that is going to depend on what the federal government does, you know, how long they're going to keep propping up the economy. So, you know, as soon as that changes, then, you know, we'll see a drop in prices. And from Tyler, so awesome. You guys saved me $300,000.
Yeah, I remember
it
was
was
ecstatic.
huge.
Yeah. He was ecstatic.
So following the steps, everybody, following these steps will save you money.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that's easy breezy to do is get those contractor bids. Get
And
the
ugly photos.
the ugliest photos, because you want to take as much evidence as possible. The one thing that you have that the tax appraise board that you're going up against does not is that you live in that property or you own that property. You know every bad thing about it. You know if there is a 7-Eleven next door. You know all of these things matter. And so besides the address and the comps, they don't know anything else about the property. So you need to bring all of this with you. That's why photos are important, photos of every bad thing. The cracked tile, the crack in the driveway.
How close you are to a multifamily.
How close you are
To
to
an
a
apartment
highway.
building. How close you are to a highway. Wires in your backyard. Take photos of that stuff.
Real
Exactly.
quick, just because I know Tyler very well, I know when he was doing his, like, he puts together a full-on notebook for every single property because he uses the secret word of empathy and realizes that the people that are there hearing the cases, they're usually yelled at and complained to and bitched at.
Absolutely.
And they don't, like you said, know nothing about the property. So if he comes in with like a copious amount of notes and evidence and pictures.
But it's also an awesome guy and super nice.
Right. But the thing is, though, he goes information overload for the perspective of, okay, I get it. It's not worth it. Moving on. The kind of that way.
Exactly. And that is a awesome tactic as far as going in because it is, they're trying to knock these people out.
Yeah, he just commented on the YouTube. He said 68 pages, the more pictures, the better. 68 pages per property.
Wow. And
And y'all know how Tyler is.
Yes, I do.
That's not
He
Harry
is.
Potter pages.
Yeah.
Those are probably like Bible pages where it's like
Oh my
tight
goodness,
script.
that's funny.
Wow.
That is funny.
No, but it's so true. And I also like the part about going and being nice. If you are somebody that's kind of
Foul.
foul or you rub people the wrong way and you're just not going to be pleasant when you go in and you're going to go in defensive.
Or you're angry, because a lot of people are angry about their property taxes going up again because this is about the third year in a row. Because there are years whenever we have a down market that they don't raise the taxes for 3 to 5 years, And then when they're raising them every single year, people start to get irritated.
Well, and you're sitting there taking it very personally.
Yep.
But you're just an address. Mm-hmm. They've never met you. They're not penalizing you. They're doing a job, a business going, all right, well, we just have to blindly put a value on this.
Exactly.
We don't know what we're looking at. So yeah, if you know your house is awesome on the inside, there's probably something.
Yeah, try something. And if it's not inside, then pick outside, then pick surrounding areas. You can have a super, like Dallas. Dallas is kind of weird because they didn't start implementing some zoning until late. So there's certain pockets of Dallas where it's a fabulous neighborhood surrounded by
Garbage.
not so fabulous, warehouse district, or now all of a sudden you've got a car dealership 2 blocks away that's not a great car. These things matter. They really do. And so if you're bringing it to their attention, bring it to their attention in a very nice way and be as pleasant as possible because a smile goes a long, long way in this, particularly in this instance, because they are getting pummeled with attitude and people being upset with them and not liking their decisions. So
And if you know that you are going to have a bad attitude when you go in and talk to them, hire somebody.
hire somebody. It's so simple.
And it's not that expensive.
No, we'll mention a few at the end because I do it for existing clients and for my own properties, but I don't typically go out there and solicit.
Searching.
Yeah, I don't solicit for this.
I know a couple attorneys who do it, and these guys know the county boards, and you want to make sure when you're finding these guys that they're buddies with them.
Because that's important.
They play golf together, there's card games, and if they're all friends and they've been friends for years, they just go in and go, all right, these are what I have, boom, 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 rubber stamp it.
Yeah, let's expedite this and get on down the road.
Hey, how's the wife? How's the kids? Great to see you again.
Exactly.
You want to play golf next week?
Well, I mean, it's the same as if you have a defense attorney or something like that, or your divorce attorney. You want them to know those judges in those courts. In this case, you're talking about just know some of the board members.
Absolutely.
So once you decide that, okay, I've got your appointment date and you're gathering information. So we were mentioning definitely contractors, get those contractor bids, get photos of everything you possibly can, multiple photos if you need to, and then take it outside as well. If you've got, the electricity, those big ginormous electricity
Wires,
easements and
yes.
stuff, then take a picture of that. I know that one of the properties that I'm disputing right now is close to a highway, but not just is it close to a highway. I know that they are about to pass a bond to put up a sound barrier wall, but only on one side of that highway. So now it's
Oh my
going
God.
to exponentially increase the sound on
Oh my God, that's awful.
in the neighborhood that I'm disputing property taxes. So just knowing that is going to help me when I go in there, because noise ordinance, you're supposed to be in a certain decimal. That's part of my homework. I haven't done it yet, but you're supposed to be.
Are you going to include that in your report?
Yeah, because if you're over that decimal, then that makes your property value less. I mean, it's less desirable. If I pull up to that house and I'm trying to buy it and I walk out to the front yard and all I hear is traffic from a major highway, that's a deterrent. You don't want to be
Excellent.
next to the highway, or commercial properties and that sort of thing.
Well, I wish I had protested my own personal property taxes this year, because while the outside looks great,
Yep.
the inside I've got to have the sewer line ripped up about 15 feet right in the middle of my house, which has already caused,
Foundation damage.
well, not so much foundation, but the wood floor.
Yep. It's
The wood
starting to
floor
pop.
is popped. So, yes. Anyways, if you all like this show, please like, share, follow us on our new YouTube channel, Real Estate Divas, and we'll have it all in the comment section. We would love that, because we're looking for things that you all want to know about. Jerleigh and I have combined experience. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, our combined experience
30,
is like
35
yep.
years in real estate on both the retail and investment side. So we want to give you all the best show possible. So follow, communicate with us, ask questions.
And if you ask questions and we don't get to it during the show, then we will definitely be commenting and answering questions after the show. But definitely reach out to us on Facebook if you have any questions particular to some other subject or would like to see something on the show. We'd love to hear from you.
Now, not all counties are online. And I know our first steps are you go online, you look at your property taxes, you go, I don't like that value, click, then you start collecting your documents before your meeting date.
Exactly. Before your meeting date, and then, you have your packet together, and make sure whenever they have that date, you are on time. There's always going to be, if you're doing it in person, or at least as of last year, whenever we had to go in person, I mean, line out the door, you're waiting, you're there for, if you're doing Dallas or some of the bigger counties and more metropolitan areas, yeah, it's going to be a half a day. Just getting there, waiting, your name gets called, then you've got your court thing, then you go and check out and your day's done. And if you have multiple properties in one county, you can ask for all of those properties to be disputed at the same time, up to 20 properties.
Up to 20 at one time.
Up to 20. So you don't have to come in separate for each single one.
Does that vary county by county?
I think it does.
It's almost got to. So verify that before you.
But I know
in
in this general area, even the surrounding counties, that it's up to 20.
I think I went in one year. I had 16.
Yeah, but you have to indicate that, because otherwise they're going to give you 20 different appointments, and nobody's got time for that.
No, and they have a section, at least in Dallas County they do. They have a section going, okay, are you disputing one property or multiple properties?
And if you have somebody like me, or you've hired somebody, you're going to have to go ahead and assign them the property, assign them there's a paperwork. Each county's different, and they provide that paperwork online. But it's basically saying that you're allowing someone to dispute and have access to anything that relates to this property or other properties. You get to list as many properties as you have, and you're giving them the rights to it. You sign it, make sure the dates are correct. Like I said, that was an issue with one of the properties I disputed last year, and I didn't find out until I was in front of the board, and they're like, sorry, you're not, we have everything here. We know you have this appointment. You were allowed to speak on his behalf up until such and such, May 15th, but now you're not. So just make sure that information's correct and that affidavit gets filled out so that somebody can dispute it on your behalf.
Okay, so you're going in, you're online, you've collected all of your documents, all of your ugly photos, all of your bids, as many as you possibly can get, as many photos as possible.
Well, and the photos too, don't forget to include the photos if you're trying to say, hey, there's a power easement, or hey, there's commercial right behind me, or
make sure your house is included in that, right?
Make sure you take pictures of those things, because like I know there's a property that I disputed out in Ellis County, and it's right off a farm road, farmer market road that's heavily trafficked. So I took a picture of that during like rush hour, so you can see car to car to car, but also at the end of their 3-house street, which is all houses on, about 2 acres or whatever. But at the very end of the street, now there's this warehouse thing. Because, in the country, things are just weird,
right.
But the people on the board didn't realize that. They didn't know that, there's 3 nice houses back to back to one another, but at the end of their street, right at the farmer's market road that's super busy, is like this warehouse commercial property. That doesn't do well for your property. So, and we were able to lower those taxes by a chunk.
Excellent. Shout out to Sammy Prito from Lubbock, Texas. Thanks for watching.
Hi, Sammy.
And I love this from Tyler, who's hanging out right now in Kaufman County. I did not know this. So get a copy of the properties that the board is going to be used as comps. They must legally give you a copy.
They have, basically you can go in there, and what they're doing now, because everybody's gone more online. You couldn't do this so much in the past because a lot of the smaller counties hadn't gone online yet, but with COVID, you can go on there and you can get all of their evidence that they're going to use in the dispute. So that includes their comps. So you can go in, and if you've got a realtor that you're working with, or if you have access to a program software like Propelio, to where you can go in, see the pictures, and so now I'm disputing their evidence. I'm sitting there going apples to apples. This house has granite throughout, and you used it as a comp. That is not okay. This is my laminate or whatever it is. And even if it is somewhat comparable, you can nitpick it. You know what your house looks like. They don't. Yours isn't for sale. It didn't just sell. They don't have access to those pictures.
Right, and they don't know what your house looks like on the inside.
Yeah.
They're not coming.
No, nobody's coming to your house. That's the other misconception is, what if somebody comes to my house and checks out, we got the retaining wall fixed a week ago, but now I'm disputing, or we got it done at the end of last year, and now I'm disputing based on the pictures of my ugly retaining wall that was kind of leaning. Well, use those pictures. Nobody's coming to your house.
Right, because remember, they've got a certain amount of time that they have to get this done before they've got to be able to release and do for next year what the property values are going to be.
Yep.
They do not have time to go to everyone's house who is.
But also,
I think now is a good time to say this is for entertainment purposes only.
Right, right. Please consult an attorney. We are not.
We are not.
We are not legal professionals.
But I will also say, whatever you're using as evidence, like this year, if you're planning on disputing your taxes more than once, which you should, then keep record of that. Just keep a file of disputed property tax photos and what you said before, so that you're not constantly repeating yourself. They're like, oh, well, we gave you that deduction last year. if you fixed it, now I thought it was going to be this much. Now, yeah, it looks better, but I had to spend $5,000 more because they're charging more for it, you know, and I wasn't any improvements that you've done. You want to also say, I had to spend this money in order, because they'll give you a deduction for having to spend money.
Will they?
Yeah, but they won't do it the next year because now it's done.
Because now it's done and it's worth it.
Yeah.
So you said, yes, I fixed this. You charged me for this. I fixed this to get it up to.
Yeah.
But I mean, it
I'm
cost
out
me
of pocket.
this.
Yeah.
Cost me this much more.
So you can use that as well. It's not as effective as, you know, damaged or property that's like, but it helps, especially if you're in a newer neighborhood where you're like, I don't know, my house looks pretty nice. Then just talk about the upgrades and how much it was out of pocket.
Okay, so here's another question I just have. So right now you're doing all of this online, right? You've got an online appointment. At what point do you send in all of your evidence? Because you've got to, you've got to scan it in. It's not like you're going in with a binder.
So if they're not doing in-person appointments, which a lot of counties are not doing right now, if they're not doing in-person appointments, then those are going to be online, and it's going to be either Zoom or a conference call or something, and they send you the link for that prior to. But to submit evidence, then you've got to submit that 3 days prior in most cases.
3 days prior.
Some of them I've seen 48 hours, but I mean, you've got to do it prior to
So, but that's
the
a
actual
deadline.
appointment.
Do you want to send it earlier? Or is anybody even going to look at it? Or
I mean, you can, if you've got it, send it earlier, you know, get it off your plate, but I'm kind of a last minute girl.
yeah.
So
Just make sure and make the deadline.
Just make the deadline, most definitely. And they'll tell you what that deadline is.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So what other tips?
Besides that, I mean, one of the biggest tips that I found as far as this year is knowing what's going on in your neighborhood or your city, because like I said, that bond, I wouldn't have known about that except it was on my neighborhood, like vote against this, vote against that, you know, and then I found out that bond is going to put up that sound barrier wall, but that's only going to echo on another side. So that is going to really help as far as disputing the property taxes. So knowing what's going on in your neighborhood. So if you have a lot of construction, road construction, that sort of thing, while it may not affect you in future years, it definitely affects you this year. And that's what you're trying to concentrate on. And then the other thing that has just started kind of rearing up and may not help you this year, but definitely something you want to look into next year, is pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. What's going on in your neighborhood?
And they're popping up, everyone.
They really are.
I've seen 3 in the last couple days.
Well, I looked up Propelio prior to, because there's lists on there, you know, the probate, affidavit of heirship, but in addition to that, pre-foreclosure and foreclosure. So I looked up in all the neighborhoods I'm researching, trying to figure out if there's pre-foreclosure going on in those neighborhoods that I can use as evidence that this neighborhood is going to start seeing some hurt from the whole COVID thing.
And it is, I mean, as we saw a decade ago,
Yep.
it takes, 1 or 2, okay, not a big deal, but there's that critical mass of foreclosures, and all of a sudden, nobody can sell their house.
Exactly, because it's flooded with foreclosures, or you're having to compete with foreclosure prices. So if you're having to compete with foreclosure prices, then your market value is plummeting.
And
so, which means that your property value needs to be less.
and for everybody who's in real estate investment knows this, some people just don't face reality, and they think, oh, I'm going to be able to save my house from foreclosure, so they just don't stop it. And all of a sudden the auction comes up and that house is foreclosed on, and yeah, you're dealing now with, that's the price that something sold at, and it might be in pristine condition.
Yeah, you never know, and we don't really, we don't know what's going on right now as far as we know that it's going to soften because of the unemployment. There's just no way for it not to affect real estate, and I'm not trying to be all doomsday or anything.
No.
It's just a fact. It will, even though it's not currently, you will start to see signs of it. So I had pulled those lists from Propelio, and for 2 of my properties, there's 2 pre-foreclosure properties right there in that neighborhood that I'll be using whenever I go to dispute these, because it's a trend that we're going to see. And so even though it's not proof that something sold at this, it's letting that board know, hey, we know what's about to happen. I know what's about to happen. And you need to just making them more aware that it's already starting. And maybe they'll be more leaning towards your number that you picked.
Right. And it's just getting them to go, yeah, all right.
Yep.
It is softening a bit. We know that. And so they'll just maybe come down closer to the number you're asking for.
Exactly. Again, not a hard negotiation tool right now, because we are talking pre-foreclosures, and there's not a plethora of them out there right now, but it definitely will probably play a big role next year, and that's if the tax appraisal district ends up sending out, that notices that appraisals are going up.
Right. So number one takeaway, you all out there personally can go, protest your property taxes. You can do it yourself.
Yeah.
But you can also hire someone.
You can also hire someone. So there's several that we've recommended in the past. If you want to go, because I know one of them personally.
Dave Arant.
Yep.
No, and he's good. I mean, he's
I've recommended
really
him, and my client was so thrilled, just because they had so many properties. They're like, and in several counties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the guy is good, and he's been doing it for years.
So
years.
just because you said his name, and I haven't talked to Dave in many a year. We used to office in the same building, and one thing I always respect about Dave was the fact that, like, on snow days when it's iced over, and I live 30 minutes away, I was at the office, and Dave was at the office, and nobody else was at the office. So it's like, to me, when you don't have to be there and you're still there,
Yeah.
that shows
It
a little
says
work
something.
ethic.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and shout out to Dave Arant if he ever sees this.
Yeah. Hey.
Not that he has to learn how to
No.
protest property taxes, but so yeah, what's the basic cost?
So each of them are slightly different, and you can do your own research and all that jazz, and compare apples to apples. But it looked like, just from looking, doing our own research, is they are somewhere in the range of $350 to $400 per property. And that's depending. We're talking about, that could be a residential property. That's most likely a residential property, fee. For commercial property, just because it's harder to dispute, it's harder to pull comps, it's just more time consuming in general, then you're going to pay more to dispute those property taxes.
Do you, when you're working with your clients, do you physically go to the house? I know you don't have very many, so
Yep.
some of these guys are going to have just hundreds of properties to do. I find it hard that they're going to go visit every single one of those, and they're not, right? So are the clients expected to take every ugly photo that they possibly can of the house?
I encourage, when I'm working with clients on this particular project, then I encourage them to take as many pictures as possible. Tell me any repairs that they have done, anything that is in disrepair. Can they get a picture of it? I mean, things like plumbing you can't get a picture of, right? But you can say, I haven't had the plumbing replaced, and we've had this many, can you send me the receipts of those invoices, or just the invoices in general, or have you had bids on anything? So that sort of thing, I try to get, the owner to take care of, because otherwise I might be running around like crazy trying to do these things. And if you're doing any volume of tax disputes, it can be a real pain. And that's not much money to be charging for tax disputes.
$350, $400, that's
Yeah.
cheap. That's really not
So
much.
if that's what you're paying, and you're paying somebody else to do it, then expect to have to do a little bit of homework too.
Okay, but you're still going to pay 350, 400, but that will equate to how much in tax savings?
I mean, it could be thousands. Thousands. You know, I know last year whenever I did a dispute on a house up in South Lake, that one I wasn't sure because it's an amount, I mean, it was a gorgeous home. It was like a 4,000 square feet, you know, I mean, it was gorgeous. And they were raising the property value quite a bit. And I was surprised that, I mean, we went at him. He took all the pictures that I needed him to take. We did as much homework and kind of overpowered them, kind of like what Tyler did, with information in hopes that this would make them just be like, okay, enough's enough. Yeah, what did you want again? They didn't give us what we wanted, but they gave me substantially less than what I was expecting. Because I was expecting somewhere around $25,000 reduction in the tax appraised value, and we ended up getting closer to 50, and they had raised it about $80,000 from last year.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
you got, I mean, you got the additional down 50%, which is
Yeah, exactly.
which is excellent.
Exactly. So if y'all have any questions, again, just shout out, let us know, and I'll try to get that to you. We're no experts, but there are experts.
But in a nutshell, take ugly photos, find all of the problems within your neighborhood. Don't be afraid.
No.
Don't be afraid. They're not gonna raise it higher.
Yeah, they're not going to raise it higher. Don't be afraid to dispute it. And then also, just remember the key here is that so many people, I've had to inform so many people that we are not talking about market value, and it doesn't correlate at all. Because that misconception seems to be, and especially in the older community, it seems to be
Like my dad.
really ingrained in their thought process. Or it's, no, I like the schools here. It keeps the neighborhood nice. I want to make sure they still make money. They're still making money off of you. Don't get me wrong. They are still making your property value is still going to go up. You're just trying not to let it go up quite enough to kick you out of the neighborhood to where you can't afford the house anymore, you know?
And that does, I mean, I've heard that, especially in the last year, 12 to 24 months, I've heard a lot of real estate investors, you know, who are locked into 1 and 2 year leases. All of a sudden, they went from making a couple $100s a month to losing a couple $100s a month on their rental property.
Exactly. Because a lot of those rental properties, people are buying rental properties because it's for the long term. It's not for the short term $200 that you're getting a month, but you definitely don't want to be upside down on that monthly
Correct.
nut.
Okay, shout out to Kimberly Ware.
Hey, beautiful.
I know, I miss you.
I know. And I love the dress that you posted a picture in the other day. I think it was yesterday. She was like, I wasn't sure about this dress, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, she's a great investor. She's getting pretty active too.
Oh my gosh, she's going crazy.
Yeah, blowing up. Awesome. Well, anybody out there, please follow the Real Estate Divas
On YouTube
and Facebook.
Yep.
Find us, put any questions that you have about protesting property taxes. Again, it's kind of like what you do if you went after a short sale.
Yeah, make it seem as ugly as possible. Basically, that's the rule of thumb. Make your house seem as ugly as possible, undesirable. That's what we're going for. But yeah, reach out to us if you've got any questions. I'm Jerleigh Thompson with Texel Real Estate.
And I'm Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments.
And thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. Bye, you guys.